Student Learning Objectives, SLOs, are one method to document the influence that educators have on student learning and growth. This short video will review the SLO process, introduce a few changes to the SLO template, and share a new tool to easily track your SLO data. SLOs are content or grade-specific learning objectives that measure student learning over a defined period of time. SLOs are divided into three parts: the learning goal, a description of what students will be able to do at the end of the course, the subject, or the grade level; the assessments, measurements of students' understanding of that learning goal; and the targets, the expected student outcome by the end of the instructional period. When creating student learning objectives, the following framework provides a solid foundation. First, utilize Utah core standards to identify the big ideas. Then establish rigorous yet reachable student learning goals. Next, gather baseline data about students' starting points and project their expected targets. And lastly, determine the learning growth by comparing the expected targets with the actual targets. To create effective SLOs, educators need to understand and unpack the core standards. Then they can identify the big ideas to determine the learning goals, what students need to know and be able to do, by expecting all students to make progress towards the learning goal. It's important to use SMART goals when creating student learning objectives. This means that the goals are specific, focused on content standards or the learner's needs, that they're measurable, they use an appropriate instrument to assess the learning goal, that the goals are appropriate. The learning goals are important, meaningful, and require deep understanding. That they're realistic, that they're achievable for both the teacher and the students. And lastly, that they're time-bound, an appropriate unit of instruction time for those goals. Educators also need to include cognitive rigor in developing student learning goals, such as Webb's depth of knowledge, complex thinking skills that promote deep understanding. By incorporating this, students will be using higher level thinking skills, including concept, strategic, and extended thinking. All of these aspects are contained in the CASH SLO template, which you see in the screen in front of you. In an effort to improve the SLO process, some minor modifications have been made to this document. The format has remained pretty much the same. One significant change is found on the assessment and scoring section. You will notice that teachers need to record their baseline and target data, which needs to accompany this form. With that in mind, we created a tool that easily tracks student data and automatically determines if targets were met. Another change is found in the teacher ratings section. Performance bands have been added: below proficient, approaching, proficient, and highly proficient. This information helps educators and administrators understand the expectations for each of the SLO teacher ratings. Once SLO learning goals are completed, the next step is to gather data about the students' starting points and their expected targets. On the screen in front of you is a new SLO data template tool. This tool tracks SLO data all on one page: past, current, and expected target data. It also automatically determines if students met their target and the percentage of students meeting the target. Since principals approve SLOs, your school administrator can determine if he or she would like you to use the simplified SLO tool. The top section includes SLO target information, such as teacher, school, and the subject being taught. It also lists the SLO performance bands and the percentages associated with each of the bands. In the next section is a sample teacher's SLO target. From the baseline data, this teacher predicts that 82% of students will demonstrate growth in English, as evidenced by the percentage of students who met the target. Teachers can modify the percentages, the class, and the grade to create their own SLO targets. Be sure to include the assessment name of the target information. Next, teachers enter their students' names and update the target dates as needed. Be sure to delete any unused rows of students, as this will make sure that the data is accurately stored. Then teachers add the target data, historical and baseline targets. Remember, all data needs to be in the percentages of students' proficiency scores. The spreadsheet automatically determines the students' proficiency levels and highlights the cells accordingly. Red for below proficient, yellow for approaching, light green for proficient, and dark green for highly proficient. Teachers can then set expected learning targets, targets that predict the growth students are expected to make toward the learning goal. After the final assessment, teachers enter the students' actual target results to determine the student growth. The spreadsheet automatically compares the expected targets with the target results. Then it automatically determines if each student met their goal in the last column under Target Met. It also provides a running tally near the bottom of the page. The total number of students, the total number of students who met the target, and the percentage of students who met the target. The overarching goal is for teachers' predicted target to closely resemble the percentage of students who met the target. For example, this teacher predicted 82% of students would meet their goal, which is evidenced by this data. These SLO templates can be found on the Cache County School District website. See the Curriculum and Instruction Department's homepage.